Clause 8, Part 1, first schedule. Clause 8 stating that CA in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he accept the position of an auditor which was previously held by or which was held by predecessor or previously held by other chartered accountant without communicating him in writing. It means that suppose X is a practicing chartered accountant. He has been or he accepted the position of an auditor. It means that in the previous year it was such a position of auditor was held by some other chartered accountant. Suppose it was Y. Okay, so X has accepted the position of an auditor without communicating Y, which was held by other CA. It was what? Mr. Y. So in this case X will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct, because if a chartered accountant in practice accepting the position of an auditor without communicating with the predecessor auditor, he shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. So as per clause 8, it has been stated that CA in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he accept the position of an auditor which was previously held by other chartered accountant without first communicating him in writing. The concerned chartered accountant shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. So without first, that is before accepting it, first they have to make the communication with the Y. So X made a phone call to Y for the purpose of providing the details with respect of such an appointment. Is it valid? So can this action by Mr. X protect him from clause 8? No, because it has been already stated that communication should be in writing. That is, communication of incoming auditor with the predecessor auditor has to be in writing. Any other modes of communication shall not be treated as what? A valid communication, and such communication has to be done before acceptance of appointment. Then why such communication is to be done? As a part of professional courtesy or for the following purpose: to determine any non-compliance of provisions of Companies Act. That is, they have many requirements, many provisions, many sections as per the Companies Act 2013. So the incoming auditor or newly appointing auditor is required to determine whether the company has made any non-compliance with respect to such provisions. Then to determine whether there exists any non-payment of undisputed audit fee. That is where there is not having any dispute between the audit fee, but the client is not making the payment of audit fee to the predecessor auditor. So as to determine this, that is undisputed audit fee. Then, and why the previous auditor has been removed? Because of non-compliance of to determine whether any non-compliance, non-payment of any undisputed audit fee. The third one is that whether the predecessor auditor has been issued what? Qualified audit report. So to determine whether the predecessor auditor has issued any qualifications to the audit report. So in the first two reasons, that is non-compliance of Companies Act 2013 or non-payment of undisputed audit fee by the client, but they have some exception. I will discuss it now. So in these two reasons or in these two cases, the new auditor, that is the incoming auditor, shall not accept the audit engagement. In this case, that is issuance of qualified audit report, auditor may accept the audit report only if the attitude or the professional behavior of predecessor auditor was unjust. In that case, the incoming auditor may accept the audit engagement without or irrespective of whether the previous audit report is whether there is having any qualifications to the previous audit report. And in the first two cases, auditor shall not accept the audit engagement. But at the same time, this undisputed audit fee is not paid by a sick unit. Then auditor may, that is new auditor is required to accept the audit engagement. He shall not reject the audit engagement. Then issuance of qualified audit report, that is predecessor auditor has issued, 1 minute, sorry for the disturbance friends. Predecessor auditor issued qualified audit report. Incoming auditor, after communicating with the predecessor auditor, is required to determine whether it is because of any valid reason or invalid reason. I am telling the healthy practice. If it is of valid reason, auditor shall not accept the audit engagement. That is, after communicating with the predecessor auditor, auditor shall not accept what? Audit engagement. This is the healthy practice, or it may be depends upon the incoming auditor. I have already told that if the incoming auditor feels that the predecessor auditor was unjust, then the incoming auditor may accept the audit engagement. But the healthy practice is not to accept audit engagement if the qualification was on the basis of a valid reason. If it is based on invalid reason, auditor may accept the audit engagement. Then, suppose if there exists any dispute in respect of any fee between the client and predecessor auditor, in whose favor our incoming auditor shall provide his statement. So, incoming auditor shall act only in favor of the predecessor auditor, not on behalf of the client. This is a simple point, not give that much of importance on this point. Then, such a communication shall be done only through registered post acknowledgement due. We have already told that such a communication in between the predecessor auditor and incoming auditor should be done in, such a communication should be in writing, and it should be through registered post acknowledgement due. Then it is the responsibility of the predecessor auditor to reply immediately or as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Then new auditor or the incoming auditor shall wait for the response or reply of the predecessor auditor for a reasonable time. ICAI has not issued any guidelines clarification with respect to the reasonable time. They have already provided that the incoming auditor should wait for reasonable time for the reply or what? For the reply of the predecessor auditor. Predecessor auditor is required to provide the reply as soon as possible, and the incoming auditor should wait for a reasonable time. So it has been stated in clause 8 that CA in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. Deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he accept the position of an auditor. Accept the position of an auditor which was previously held by other chartered accountant without first communicating him in writing. So this may be mainly for the purpose of determining whether any non-compliance with the provisions or sections of Companies Act 2013 or whether there is having any dispute in between, or not dispute, non-payment of any undisputed audit fee with the client and the auditor, or for the purpose of determining whether there exists any qualifications of the audit report. In case if there exist qualifications to the audit report, auditor may accept the audit engagement if he thinks that predecessor auditor was unjust or his behavior was some sort of unjust. Then in case if there is having any dispute between the client and predecessor auditor, the incoming auditor shall act in favor of the predecessor auditor. Such a communication shall be undertaken only through registered post acknowledgement due. Predecessor auditor or the previous auditor shall communicate within as soon as possible, and what? The new auditor or the incoming auditor shall wait for a reasonable time so as to get the reply or recommendation representation of whom? Predecessor auditor. They have some important point also. We will discuss the same. That is, we will continue with clause 8. So, clause 8 is mainly for the purpose of determining whether there exist any circumstances that warrant not to accept the audit engagement. So, communication is compulsory. That is, it can be tax audit, it can be internal audit, it can be concurrent audit, it can be cost audit, it can be company audit, audit of cooperative society, but communication is compulsory. So, it can be stat audit, internal audit, concurrent audit, tax audit, GST audit. Irrespective of the nature of audit, communication is compulsory. Okay, that is, incoming auditor should communicate with the predecessor auditor. Then communicate with the same auditor who conducted work in the same capacity. What is mean by it? Suppose Mr. X is going to be appointed as the tax auditor of the company. Mr. A was the internal auditor, Mr. B was the tax auditor. So, X, both are predecessor auditor. To whom X should communicate before accepting the tax audit assignment? X shall communicate with the B who performed the same work, that is in the same capacity. Okay. communicate with the auditor who conducted the work in the same capacity. If X is going to be appointed as a GST auditor, he shall communicate with the predecessor GST auditor. X is going to be appointed as an internal auditor, predecessor internal auditor. Conduct concurrent audit, predecessor auditor who conducted the concurrent audit. Okay. Then sometimes there may have tight time schedule. What is mean by it? Suppose we have already told that it is the responsibility of the incoming auditor to communicate with the predecessor auditor in writing. It has to be registered post acknowledgement due, and predecessor auditor shall reply as soon as possible, and incoming auditor should wait for a reasonable time. Suppose there is not having that much of time to complete the audit work. That is, they have to complete the audit work within the tight time schedule. In that case, incoming auditor have one solution. That is conditional acceptance. Incoming auditor may told the client that I am accepting the audit on the basis of some conditions. If I got anything which is giving examples or circumstances that warrant not to accept the audit engagement, I will withdraw from the engagement. So it is based such an audit, that is the audit has been commenced on the basis of what? Conditional acceptance. That is, auditor have the option to withdraw from the engagement if he identified any circumstance after communicating with the previous auditor which may warrant that not to accept the audit engagement. Okay. Then the incoming auditor, irrespective of the fact whether the client has communicated with the predecessor auditor or not, incoming auditor is responsible to make such a communication. But at the same time, it is also the responsibility of incoming auditor to ask the client whether you communicated with the predecessor auditor in respect of such a change or in respect of their removal. It can be done by the client. It can be done or may not be done. In case it can be done, incoming auditor also required to communicate. In case if such a communication is not done by the client, auditor shall ask the reason. That is, what are the reasons because of which you didn't communicate with the predecessor auditor, and determine. This has to be identified, plus they have to identify what? Reason for such a change. That is why the predecessor auditor is going to be changed. It may be because of a valid reason or it may be because of invalid reason. If it is on the basis of valid reason, such a removal has been made by the client, auditor may accept the audit engagement after communicating with the predecessor auditor. But in case if it is because of invalid reason, after communicating with the predecessor auditor, auditor shall not accept the audit engagement. Okay. So this is what clause 8. Clause 8 is mainly stating that CA in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if they accepted the position of an auditor which was previously held by other chartered accountant without first communicating with him in writing. So they have to first communicate, plus such a communication has to be in writing. These are the conditions that is to be complied by the practicing chartered accountant. If they fails to comply with the same, they will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. I hope you understand clause 8 thoroughly.